Among the many universes of Marvel, one was of Earth 2081, an Earth filled with destruction and death, with no life remaining and thereby no hope. Here, Bruce Banner walked on with a thick stick on the cracked Earth. He was old now and had a strong desire to die and reunite with his friends, who had left him a long time ago. But Banner was never really alone, was he? The Hulk lived within him, and the big guy wouldn't let Banner die. The tussle between Banner and Hulk makes the story of this beautifully dark story titled Hulk: The End. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. The pitiful life of two individuals. Alas, war ends all, and the global nuclear war ends almost everything. And that's exactly what happened on Earth 2081. It all came to an end with a conflict between humans, which led to a nuclear holocaust and the inevitable end of the majority of life forms and all humans on Earth. This destruction began with the First World War, with no apparent reason other than imperialistic control, power. The Second World War, also called the Great Patriotic War, gave us an advancement in the area of atomic and nuclear bombs, which were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a demonstration of power. Japan didn't reciprocate, although to date they carry a heavy sense of loss in their hearts. Even their land does so. This step led the world to understand how deadly the use of such bombs was, and hence their usage was nearly banned. But then there is no animal on Earth scarier than the man himself. The war inevitably began again, and every country, which had by and large stashed many nuclear weapons in their secret arsenal, threw them at each other like rocks. Death reigned like cats and dogs over the whole world until no man was left alive, other than the Hulk, who was unaffected by the tremendous radiation that was humming in the air, ground, and everywhere else, even now. Due to his adamancy to stay alive and prove himself the strongest, Bruce Banner was the only human alive on the planet. But more importantly, Bruce and Hulk survived because of the immunity Bruce had toward radiation. You know, the whole gamma radiation thing. This is where the story begins. He was now an old man who walked with the support of a thick stick. His old age had left him with a saggy, wrinkled face, nearly bald with some flowing white hair, and a doubt that he was over 200 years old. On the land, which was dry and cracked, he walked on with no destination in his mind, since there was no place that he wanted to go. As he kept walking, he came across a mutated form of cockroach and killed it instantly. At that moment, he felt nostalgic, since it was so very quiet. He regretted not enjoying the sounds that were all around him all the time back then, like the noise of traffic, children screaming, youngsters laughing, a phone ringing, among others. They all were like the ghosts of his past, something which made him doubt whether they even existed at all. His only reality now was going through the day, without there being any change around him, except the regular check-in by his neighbors, the mutated cockroaches, which were taken care of by the Hulk. If you've liked the video up until now, please consider hitting those like and subscribe buttons. They may be 2 small clicks for you, but they help us in amazing ways to keep bringing you these long reads. To not forget what he himself sounded like, he often spoke aloud to the Vidbot, a recorder that was left by the Watchers to record his remaining life and report back to its master once he died. Oh, and by the way, the Watchers are the same beings as Uatu, the Watcher, who appears in the What If, the Disney Plus show. Looking at the Vidbot, he said,
"Bruce, the sky glowed green today at sunset."
Symbolically, the next panel depicted him sitting on the edge of a cliff, looking silently at the sunset, which looked green, just like the humongous presence of Hulk, which overtook his senses as the sun set at night. This panel also depicts his hopelessness and vain effort in trying to make Hulk understand him, even though he's been with him in such close quarters throughout his life. Hulk's face in the sky, with his eyes glinting with arrogance, makes Bruce look like a pitiful creature at his feet, at the mercy of the green monster. He only wished to die and go to heaven where his friends were, but Hulk wouldn't let him, since he felt no other emotion other than anger, and there was no way to get through to him. So Bruce had just given up. At night, when Hulk took over, he cursed Banner and his existence with him. He wanted him gone for good, but ironically was also the one stopping him from leaving. He muttered angrily,
"Banner, puny Banner, still feel him rattling around in Hulk's head. Was out for a while, doing stupid, puny human things. Why won't Banner leave Hulk alone? Why does Banner still stay with Hulk? No matter what, doesn't Banner know that Hulk hates him more than anyone?"
He then began hallucinating. He saw the visions of the dead villains, the leader and Abomination, who had hurt him more powerfully than any other beings on the Earth, and still he hated Banner more than them, who was not responsible for destroying everything he treasured. Then his eyes fell on the Vidbot, and he wished to destroy it, but the Vidbot was always out of his reach, recording him from a safer distance. Most of all, he hated bugs as well. He saw a cockroach on the ground and instantly lifted a heavy steel letter H and smashed the bug with it, but still, he hated Banner more. Thinking about the war, Banner felt that it was an honorable decision taken by Japan not to fight back and surrender. It made the world realize that nuclear bombs were not like guns, which could be used to shoot only the warriors fighting, but they were the weapons of extinction of all living beings on Earth. Even though both world wars only brought immense turmoil, stress, and deaths in all parts of the world, such an honorable decision was not thought of again, and the result was indeed extinction. The world was left with only a sorrow-drowned Banner alive, with torn blue trousers around his waist, with his ribs sickly visible, with feet so hard that a nail gun couldn't penetrate them, and golden eyes lingering with despair and longing for death. The nastiest neighbors ever. Since there was no one left in the world, Banner had decided to explore and travel to the places where he could. He traveled across the whole of the United States and explored the entire North America. He even went to Canada during peak winters. The destruction was more or less hidden by the heavy snow, but not all was invisible. It was just frozen devastation with strong, cold winds blowing. Then he went on to Mexico, past destroyed monuments and leveled mountains, and continued down to South America, an area that was known for its rainforest and the longest river, the Amazon. Everything was now long gone. Riverbeds were dry, skeletons of the fishes were lying around, and the lush green forest was in a state of withering away, with no life remaining. There was a time in Banner's life when the changes that were occurring were continuous and non-stop. At some point, he used to fight alongside other superheroes like Iron Man, Captain America, and others to defend mankind from destruction in the form of Hulk. There was also a time he began living in Vegas, but not as Banner, but as Hulk. Hulk then lived in the guise of Mr. Fix-It, grey in color, as a mob enforcer who worked for a crime boss named Nick the Nose Cutter. In this capacity, he handled various underworld tasks and maintained order in the criminal circles of the city. But this shift to the criminal side didn't sit well with him, and therefore he left Vegas, joined the superhero side, and fought along with them for a noble cause. Even though Banner kept walking from place to place, nothing changed. The only thing that had changed was his body. He used to wear coverings on his feet, but didn't need them anymore. He had a limp from a leg break in a fight in the past, which didn't heal properly. There was a constant haze in the atmosphere every day, so he didn't need any extra protection from the sun. And since there was no human life, he wore minimal clothes. He even shaved every day so that when he turned into Hulk, he wouldn't have to look at the recording of Maestro, the evil and insane version of Hulk after coming to his human form. If you didn't know, the Maestro was a version of the Hulk from an alternate future timeline, approximately 100 years into the future, combining Banner's intelligence with the Hulk's more malevolent aspects. Even after such a long time, he noticed the traces of radiation in the air every day, but those radiations didn't have any effect on him, and he was immune to them. He didn't have to do much to survive because Hulk took care of everything. He could eat anything and gain energy from it, so Banner didn't have to. Although Hulk had out-of-the-world healing abilities, it didn't affect Banner in any way since his body kept degrading. Suddenly, when his hand started trembling, he thought he might have Parkinson's disease, or maybe his nerves were just weakened. But then it occurred to him that not only his body but the whole ground was shaking. He realized what was about to happen and took off. His neighbors were visiting him. They always came after him, and he always knew when they came since the ground began to shake due to their mass movement. They were in such huge numbers that they simply seemed like a black carpet moving around. At that moment, Hulk decided to remain silent, and that made Banner feel very woeful since he didn't want to ask for help from Hulk. He wished to die, but it was his instinct to fight, so he kept running. Instead of hearing just the skittering of those, he suddenly heard the rustling of plastic wings against hollow bodies, which forced him to have a look at what new threat was approaching him. What he saw shocked him to the core. They're flying. The bastards are flying now. They were already tough to handle before because they always took him by surprise while he slept, and now that they were flying, Banner had no other choice but to keep running. As you can see in the panels, what was coming to attack him was a swarm of mutated flying cockroaches, and there was no escape now. He must have looked like an appetizing meal to them, somebody to toy with, something comical. He kept running faster and faster, but his old body could hold only that much. He fell on the ground due to a muscle spasm, due to which he was unable to pick himself up from the ground. The swarm of cockroaches was already upon him. Even Hulk didn't have the optimum time to come out. He started feeling the breaking of his bones as his breath became ragged. He was too shocked to feel the pain and agony, and Hulk ordered him to get up in his mind. At that moment, Banner felt Hulk taking over, although he wished that he didn't. He seemed to be half relieved that those insects were already upon him and that he could maybe attain death. But Hulk came out, which ensured that Banner wouldn't die. He'd live. And so, Banner cursed him for coming out and not letting him die. Damn him to hell. Next thing we know, those flying mutated cockroaches fearlessly attacked Hulk. They swarmed him from all directions, right, left, up and down. Hulk began cursing them out loud. He wanted to kill them all, but when he smashed a few, 50 more came to attack him. They bit him all over his body and crawled everywhere. He tried running away from them, jumping over things, smashing them again and again, but soon the swarm of cockroaches enveloped him and overpowered his whole body. He muttered helplessly, "Why won't they leave me alone?" Much later, Banner saw the footage of the whole struggle on the Vidbot. He had a habit of watching the recordings of Hulk, especially in such circumstances. He exclaimed in horror as he saw it, "Holy Mother of God!" Hulk looked similar to the bodies of those helpless animals that were fully covered in oil during an oil spill incident over the coast of Alaska. The only difference was that he wasn't covered with oil, but with cockroaches that bit into his flesh and muscles as he howled and roared in an incoherent anger. Such was the sorry state of the Hulk, who triumphed over all his foes, even if they were large in numbers. An incoherent being. Banner gave credit to Hulk for his efforts. He didn't stop fighting back. He kept roaring and hitting the bugs until they left, after being sated, bored, or maybe they grew tired, just like they always did. But the view after they'd left the scene, Banner felt like he was swallowing bile. Although he'd seen such scenes multiple times, it still unsettled his stomach. The Vidbot showed him the horrific remains of Hulk left by those skittering bugs. He seemed like a dead person eaten over by maggots. Those bugs had eaten away his skin and muscles and had reached his circulatory system. His lungs were safe due to the presence of the rib cage. Otherwise, those bugs had eaten away the skin over his chest, arms, neck, and face as well. They'd torn away his tongue from his mouth, which would explain why he was lying silently in the playback. His eyes were also gouged out. It seemed like one of his kidneys and nearly a yard of his lower intestines were taken in as food too. He looked much worse than he'd been in his prior encounters. Banner figured it would take him a while to recover. Banner then ordered the Vidbot to give him a real time-lapse count so that he could see the time taken by Hulk to heal completely. Since he was a man of science, Hulk's regeneration process always piqued his interest. While looking at it, he felt nostalgic and thought back to his good old days, when all he had to do was observe something amazing, report to his friends, and get their acknowledgements. Except his friends were not of scientific temperament and wouldn't understand anything other than Tony Stark and Reed Richards. But they were long gone, so he discussed his observations with the Vidbot instead. He observed that in 2 minutes, the skin was re-knitted into the skeleton and his tongue had grown back. At 11 minutes, his eyes had grown back as well. He'd always been curious as to why it took so long for the eyes to regrow. Then he said, perhaps because the eyes are the window to the soul, and the Hulk is a soulless monster. Science and philosophy, dangerous mix. Then, at 17 minutes, he saw his intestines going back to their place, and the lining of his belly was restored. Finally, in 18 minutes, he was fully healed, in a bad mood and jumping toward the Vidbot in an attempt to snatch and smash. But as usual, the spherical structure flew 10 feet out of his reach. Hulk began his cursing again. He hated the floating globe, Banner, the bugs, and the whole world. He broke off a green cactus to eat, sat down, and muttered to himself, "At least Hulk's enemies are gone. Stupid men, stupid women, always trying to hurt Hulk, and stupid boy Rick is gone, and Betty is gone. Her father, the shouting man, is gone. All gone, and Hulk is still here. Hulk had the last laugh, and Hulk will keep laughing because Hulk the strongest one there is." He saw the visions of Betty, her father, and Rick. It seemed as if Hulk felt regret and despair in his heart as well, but his pride and arrogance were big thorns of his path to salvation. Sometime later, Banner happened to come across the Costumed Adventurers Memorial Park. Its construction was proposed by the government after the Hell on Earth War, when a lot of heroes died. So, all of them were buried in that park. Those who died in that war, those who went to outer space to protect the planet, and those who simply passed away due to old age. In that park, he saw the statues of all those heroes standing erect, although they were a little eroded and cracked. Iron Man, Captain America, Giant Man, Wonder, and many more. Their statues, grey in color, who were still looking so mighty, powerful, who would do anything to protect the people on this planet if given a chance again. Little would they know that all their efforts to save humanity from the clutches of doom went down the drain. Man became the enemy of mankind, and there was no one to save man from man. But for Hulk, this nuclear holocaust was nothing strange. He'd always expected such an outcome to take place someday. He never believed in humans, and when he saw humans fighting among themselves, he derived a sense of satisfaction because it justified his belief. He knew from the beginning that protecting from alien invasions and apocalyptic situations wouldn't turn human beings into moralistic and ethical beings. He knew that humans were selfish and cruel and would go to any lengths to fulfill their desires. The only byproduct this time was the nuclear war. Hulk was separated from what was happening around him during that time. It didn't matter to him that there were criminals outside the government who began the bombings. He didn't care that millions of innocent lives were gone just like that, and the toll kept rising. He gave no attention to the remaining heroes and defenders who were doing their utmost to turn the situation around and dying in the process, just like those other villains running around in the city. The nuclear holocaust showed no mercy on the good ones. Back then as well, Hulk's mind was focused on only two things. First, he was the strongest being alive. Second, he wanted solitude. He didn't want anyone around him again. Thereby, it didn't bother him that bridges were breaking and falling like cards, people were burning alive and melting away, the Eiffel Tower was disintegrating, skyscrapers, multi-story buildings were just demolishing due to the impact of the attack. He seemed indifferent to the fact that he was alive and well, while others were dying of old age, as they should. It didn't seem bizarre to him that he'd been living for so long. His healing abilities didn't let him age and repeatedly healed him at amplified rates. However, similar treatment wasn't given to Banner since his health kept declining and his body aging. The huge amount of radiation released during that last World War made him even stronger, but the only thing that bothered him was the sound of the explosions and the people dying. While on his way, he came across a place that had turned into a junkyard. In that rubble, he saw a gaunt little kid sitting cross-legged with a white pup in his lap. That kid had an expression of utter despair and desolation on his face, and his whole persona begged for help. His bones were showing, and most probably he was orphaned and was soon to die due to the toxic level of radiation. His skin had sagged, and there were several marks on his face. With eyes filled with tears and lips trembling, the kid didn't move, but kept staring at the Hulk as he ran away from the place. Introduction to an extinction. Banner never understood why such a thing bothered a soulless monster like him. Maybe he got annoyed looking at that pitiful face, or something stirred in his heart. Only Hulk knows. After escaping from that place, Hulk returned to his birthplace, New Mexico, and sealed himself and Banner inside the Gamma Cave until all voices of explosions and shrieks of the dying died out. They stayed there for a very long time, without much need of any sustenance, since they didn't expend their energy on anything. Many years must have gone by since the mouth of the cave suddenly opened. Bright yellow light fell on Banner's face, blinding him. He tried getting his bearings together, but he was old, and it wasn't easy. A robot-like being walked into the cave and said, "So, my readings were correct. A human has survived. How inconvenient." Banner didn't understand. With the support of the boulders around him, he stood up to have a better look at the guest. He introduced himself. "I am a recorder. My base is in the Rigel sector. I've been here for some time at the request of a number of races, recording the demise of humanity." Banner went into a state of shock. He couldn't believe his ears. Meanwhile, the recorder informed him that the Kree and Skrulls were about to form an alliance and celebrate it very festively. He also told them that their species was the most troublesome one, and that it was good that it came to its end with only a single one remaining. But Banner kept reeling in shock. Then he shouted, "This isn't some kind of joke!" "I know, I wasn't laughing." Banner sat down again, and there was a moment of silence between them. He let the reality sink in that he was the only man on Earth. No one survived, and then asked whether he'd be killed too. The recorder then asked him if he wanted to die, to which Banner's instant response was a no. He then smirked and said, "You'll change your mind." He then explained that he wouldn't be killing Banner, but would leave behind a Vidbot instead that would record everything on his behalf and report to him about his demise. He began to leave, but Banner rushed towards him and asked him whether there was something that he could still do for the surviving people, if there were any. He still couldn't believe what had been told to him. The recorder then said, "If you should happen to address the Vidbot, please enunciate. Your species has, had a tendency to mumble." And then he vanished into thin air, and Banner was left all alone with only the Vidbot. Although that recorder mocked the human species and left, his advice did come in handy to Banner. He realized that since he had no one to talk to anymore, his communication skills might get rusty. Therefore, he usually talked to the Vidbot. As time tediously went by, Banner soon realized that that recorder was right about another thing as well, that he'd change his mind. It was true, and he wanted to die. One day, without thinking or pondering upon the idea, he just let himself fall off a rocky cliff in an attempt to die, hoping that Hulk wouldn't get it. But as he fell, a very furious Hulk gradually took control and saved him from death. He began shouting angrily,
"I hate him! Hate puny Banner! Tried to kill himself. Stupid Banner! He thinks he can kill Hulk. He thinks he can get away. But Hulk will go on forever. Hulk is strongest one there is."
Hulk shielded the fall as he fell on the ground with a big thud. Rocks and boulders flew everywhere. That's when the hate relationship between the two began and has continued since then. On one particular night, Banner dreamed of a beautiful girl while sleeping in the cave. In his dream, that beautiful girl, who was wearing no clothes, was standing at the edge of a plateau, and she looked divine. She had long brown hair going below her hips. She was looking at him very happily. Banner felt giddy. It had been way too long since someone looked at him like that and was happy to see him, especially a woman. It seemed unreal and some kind of trap. But at this point, Banner had nothing to be afraid of anymore. He started walking toward her and began noticing her splendid details. She had bright golden eyes and there was a flower in her hair, which enhanced her charisma manifold. To Banner, she seemed like an overripe fruit begging to be devoured. He also came to realize that his ragged and shabby appearance didn't bother her. He was happy because he felt like she wanted him and needed him. There was pure green grass growing under her feet, and the sky, which initially seemed so dark and gloomy, turned to sparkling blue. He started feeling as if he'd turned young again. again, his strong, tall, and muscled self when he had felt alive and living. He felt just like that as he went into the arms of that woman. They fell on the ground, and he was upon her. He could feel her everywhere on his body, and heat began building within him, carnal desire taking hold of his senses. Then she whispered in his ear, "We will repopulate the world. We will be Adam and Eve. No, even better, we'll be gods. Gods." He woke up with a start and screamed, "Gods!" It was raining heavily outside with lightning and thunder. He looked around in panic as he felt his sweet dream vanish from his vision. The beautiful girl, green grass, flowers, blue sky, and his younger self, everything vanished in thin air. But the heat of that moment remained. The heat was in his chest, and he felt pain. He realized that it was his heart all along, which was nearing its demise, because of which he'd been feeling dull pain, like fire. Suddenly, he was able to connect all the dots, and wisdom dawned upon him. He finally understood what fire and gods meant. While he did that, Hulk began to suspect his intentions. He tried to figure out what might be going on inside Banner's head, but he admitted that although he was the strongest of all, he wasn't smarter than Banner, nor did he wish to be.
Something is going on with Banner. Never should have kept puny Banner around. Hulk is strongest, but not smartest. Hulk never needed to be smart. Smart is puny Banner, weak Banner. Hulk won't let him hurt Hulk anymore. Hulk must crush him like bug must.
Toward the end, in Greek mythology, there was a legendary and powerful titan named Prometheus. This myth encompasses the themes of creation, rebellion, and punishment. He was a master craftsman who created mankind out of clay, but with time he realized that Zeus, the mighty king of the gods, possessor of the lightning bolt, the most powerful weapon, was treating his creations very poorly. So, to get back at him and to take revenge for the depreciation of his creation, he stole fire from the gods and gave it to the humans. This fire became the root cause of all the scientific and technological developments that were made by humans. The gods were angered. They decided to punish both Prometheus and his creation. They opened Pandora's box, and all the evils like greed, hate, envy, disease, and death started running rampant among the humans. As for Prometheus, he was given a very graver punishment for his actions. He was brutally chained to a mountain peak in the Caucasus. The fire burned all the time, and he was attacked, sliced, and devoured by carrion eaters like vultures and hawks. His flesh was eaten away, his eyes plucked out, and his organs spilled out of his body. Throughout this all, Prometheus would scream and writhe in fury and pain. But since he was a titan, he fully recovered back to his as good as new form, ready to be devoured again. It was a constant, non-stop cycle. Just like Prometheus is known as the god of fire, Hulk was the living symbol of the atomic age in the world. He could be called the Frankenstein of the atomic age. He could be compared to Jekyll and Hyde as well, an intelligent and amicable scientist who wanted to bring out his inner nature, but unfortunately got trapped in the form of Hyde, who was ruthless and violent, which resulted in him ending his life to escape the dark side of science. When advanced scientific knowledge was combined with fire, a terrible outcome was foreseen, what Banner called oblivion. Banner then elucidated that when Hulk began walking the world, there were many others like him. There were giants all around, and were titans each in their own ways. Thor, Hercules, Giant Man, Captain America, and the X-Men, who owed their life to radiation, were all in one way or the other connected to this science. The result was that atomic advancement had led all mankind toward extinction. Those heroes, aka Titans, got their punishments and died, but Hulk lived on since his birth, which took place in the center of a nuclear blast. While Banner was connecting all the dots, Hulk became restless and agitated. He kept calling out to Banner to stop his chain of thoughts and drop the idea of hurting Hulk. But at that moment, Banner paid no heed to what Hulk was saying, because Hulk was the first among the Titans and also the last surviving Titan. Just like Prometheus was given such a ruthless punishment for giving fire to man, someone had to receive the punishment for the knowledge that led to the extinction of humans. But such a crime was unpardonable and unredeemable. So, the state of punishment must create a place similar to hell. That someone was Hulk, and he was being punished for being the symbol of nuclear fire by being attacked and devoured regularly by the mutated cockroaches, and then healing fully again to become a luscious fruit for the bugs. But then, even Prometheus was pardoned. Zeus permitted Hercules to release Prometheus and free him from eternal suffering. Banner believed that he'd also got a chance to receive mercy from the gods, because his body was now at its last stretch. His chest was hurting painfully. He wanted his sufferings to end, and for that, he wished for Hulk to let him go so that he may finally be at peace. He walked out of the cave into the heavy pouring rain, clutching his chest while Hulk stayed adamant and believed that Banner was trying to trick him. He threatened Banner that once he came out, all the pain would stop. But Banner was already heading toward oblivion. He knew that he was just moments away from death, but he felt very relieved and serene. The pain in his chest increased to the point where he couldn't move anymore. So he stood on the ground and took the support of a tall boulder. As he looked ahead into the horizon, he saw his loved ones. He thought he'd forgotten their faces since it had been so long, but they were just as he remembered them to be. In his vision, he saw Betty, Rick, Marlowe, Jim Wilson, Jirella, and his mother. He couldn't believe that he was looking lucky enough to meet his mother before dying. He felt free, happy, and at peace. He knew they were waiting for him, and he was ready to leave. He then asked Hulk to let him go, that it was time, but Hulk refuted angrily, denying his request. Banner started begging.
Hulk, don't, please. I'm almost there. You can come with me. It'll be wonderful. All your friends will be there and there'll be peace. Please.
Hulk denied the need for friends. He just wanted to be alone. When Banner again asked Hulk to listen to him, Hulk busted in fury.
No, for years, forever. Hulk has listened to Banner and Banner's friends talking about how Hulk ruined Banner's life. Hulk made Banner's life. Banner was nothing before Hulk. Nothing. Hulk doesn't want friends because friends will hurt him. Everyone hurts him. Everyone hurts Hulk.
There was no point in talking to Hulk anymore, but Banner tried convincing him till his last breath.
Hulk, for once, see the world without anger. See what it is, but what could be. See the place where we can see this place of peace. Hulk just can't think. Hulk, don't do it. Let me go. Let us go, please.
Banner tried with all his might to take Hulk with him, but Hulk couldn't see anything beyond his anger. He shouted,
Hulk just wants to be left alone.
Hulk took over then, and Banner passed away. Now, he was wholly and entirely alone, just like he'd always wanted. With clear eyes, he looked at the sky and thought about how Banner tried to kill him. But he outsmarted Banner because he was very strong. He then decided that he wouldn't ever let Banner come out anymore, otherwise he would die. He didn't want to die. He wanted to live forever because then everyone who kept trying to kill Hulk will win, and Hulk can't ever let them win. Even though they are gone, Hulk must still win. Hulk must never lose. He was confident that he'd be able to find a way to beat the bugs one day as well. Then we noticed a change in his demeanor. He suddenly became very calm, and out of nowhere, he expressed that he didn't miss Banner at all. It seemed that the loss of Banner, with whom he'd coexisted with for such a long time, had finally struck a nerve in his heart. His arrogance forced him not to accept it, but he felt empty inside. He began saying things to convince himself and validate himself.
Hulk doesn't miss Banner at all. Hulk is happy to be alone. Yeah, Hulk is happy. Hulk never needed Banner, never needed any of them, because if Hulk needed someone, then Hulk would be weak. And Hulk must never be weak. Never. Because Hulk is the strongest one there is.
Hulk became conflicted with this sudden change in his life. Even though they fought and bickered, at least they were together. But now, Hulk was all alone. The creature who claimed to be the strongest there is muttered suddenly,
Hulk is only one there is. Only one there is.
Sitting atop a tall boulder, he looked around into the darkest night of his life. The rain had stopped. The sky was clear again. It seemed like the rain came to take away Banner with it. Finally, the last living human met his demise. The planet now didn't have any single human alive. The nights would be long, and days would be tedious. And in all that, Hulk would be the only one alive, the only creature who cannot die and will never die. He'd walk from place to place, try fighting those mutated flying cockroaches, would be devoured by them, and then heal completely again to be a victim again. It'd be the actual hell on earth, since his punishment was now eternal, with no end, no hope, and no one to give him mercy. At last, maybe he realized the coldness of solitude, those infinite days he would have to spend alone. For once, his anger went down the drain, and he began to feel things around him as they were instead of how he thought they were. He slumped forward in a very pitiful and sorrowful state and mumbled,
Hulk feels cold.
Marvelous verdict, Hulk, The End is a very powerful and poignant exploration of the Hulk's final journey. It's a story that delves into the themes of war, regret, isolation, conflict, punishment, and redemption. The Earth 2081 is a deserted wasteland where only Banner and Hulk are alive. We see the continuous conflict between both of them, where the former wants to die and the other wants to live forever. In depth, the persona of the Hulk is explored, which makes one believe that his anger and arrogance are not rootless. He's just a big, green, troubled soul who is unable to find the right path for himself. Even though Banner tries not to leave him alone, Hulk chooses to be left alone in a world devoid of any life form and hope, which he realizes at the end. Although this ending seems very tragic, which indeed it is, it was a liberation for Banner, something that was necessary. The art style of the whole comic was similar, depicting lifeless forms of animals, forests, and homes. Everything had been turned to complete waste, and mutated cockroaches were ruling over that debris as they do. All panels depicted a sense of helplessness, hopelessness, regret, and struggle to keep up with everything that was getting out of both Hulk's and Banner's hands. For me, there's a panel a little ahead from the beginning of the story that I found very profound, in which Banner is sitting on the top of a cliff and staring across at the setting sun, which seems green to him. In this panel, the sky shows the Hulk's face, which portrays how in vain his life was under the dominance of the Hulk. Another one, the most tragic one, is at the end, where Hulk is now sitting, just like Banner, looking across the sky on a cold night, feeling empty and alone for the very first time in his life. Tragically, that was it for him though. He had a chance, but he didn't take it. As compelling as this storyline problem is, I can't imagine it becoming a good Marvel movie for the audience to watch and get entertained. Overall, it's a very good read, since often we all have conflicts within ourselves where one party wins and the other